So, good morning, everybody on the West Coast. Good afternoon to all my friends on the East Coast, and good evening to everyone in the UK and Europe. This is Tom Strange. I am curator of the Sigal Music Museum, and today it's my distinct honor to be with composer and musician and synthesize master extraordinaire Chris Stack. We're in Chris's studio today. We're socially distancing as we're supposed to be, and I swear we're being very, very careful here. But as we swing around, why, there's Chris himself. And Chris, we're delighted to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to let us to come into your studio and spend a little time. I've gotten to know Chris's music here pretty well here over the last couple of years, particularly after he came back to the Greenville area, and I've been just hugely impressed. Reading up ahead of time a little bit, it turns out that Chris and I had something of a profound moment when we were kids, really over the same music, which was Walter, now Wendy Carlos's Switched On Bach, 1968. I believe it was late 68 or early 69 when I first encountered that. And that was the first time I really began to get this huge interest in the sounds that various instruments can make, and then, what could be done with them. And so, Chris, I think you're going to lead us off with just a little bit of a sample here, and then we're going to talk a bit.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Chris, I know that we've also enjoyed some other music composers together. The work of Mike Oldfield, Tubular Bells. You know, when that sprang onto the scene, that was just wild. And I always thought Omadon was perhaps the strongest of the works that he had done. You know, during that early period. But then we moved on, and you know, Brian Eno came in and was doing all this marvelous work. Tell us a little bit about your inspiration, and then I believe you worked for the Moog company for a while, and just talk about that just a little bit.
Okay. Well, yeah, like you, I was somebody that was first just inspired by Switched on Bach. It was, you know, I kind of always had the love of classical music, and I think particularly I was in the 6th grade, I think, when it came out, and I think that Baroque music kind of conjured up images of Robin Hood and that type of era in my mind. But that combined with the Star Trek sounds was just, you know, hitting everywhere it needed to hit for me to really get into it. And, you know, I realized then when I heard it, it's like, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And amazingly enough, that kind of happened. But, yeah, I got into that. It was probably later on in high school, about 10th grade, a friend of mine loaned me the album Close to the Edge by Yes. And that really kind of blew me away. And I was a major Yes fan for many years. Actually met them in Columbia in 1976 when they played down there. I talked to them for a little bit and met the whole band except for their keyboard player, Patrick Moraz, and just wound up meeting him last year at a Bob Moog Foundation event. He came down to speak. So that was fun. But yeah, Mike Oldfield was a big influence. And that was, you know, kind of in the early days of multi-tracking and overdubbing, and that really opened me up to like, oh wait, I can be a multi-instrumentalist. I don't have to just play keyboards or just play guitar. I kind of got into playing guitar a little bit too, and got around to bass. You know, at various times I've owned banjos and mandolins, and now I do a lot of music from around the world, Japanese flutes, Arabic stringed instruments, that type of thing.
So that you guys can see just briefly over here, we have a fine box full of Japanese flutes ready at the pulling for making some of this music, and you know, throughout the house are wonderful stringed instruments of various types. And then, so you also play keyboard. So, is there an instrument that you don't play yet?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them. Brass, I haven't really gotten into too much. Reeds are a little tough for me. I have played them a little bit over the years. Actually, somewhere in here, this. Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. This is actually a bamboo clarinet.
Okay, yeah, I see the reed.
Yeah. And I can play it every once in a while if I put about a week of practice into it.
Okay.
I haven't played it in a couple of years, so I'm not going to give it a shot now.
Well, and it would need the reed soaked a little bit first, just to make it all come together.
Yeah, I used to have a bamboo saxophone too that was literally just a chunk of bamboo with a saxophone mouthpiece on the end. And
so
I could play that.
So tell us a little bit about working at Moog, and for those of you that don't know, the Moog company is actually close to us in Asheville, North Carolina, so it's a little over an hour's drive away. But talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that it was kind of a windy path getting there. Yes, being interested in synthesizers had a lot to do with me getting to electronics. After high school, I didn't take the straight path to college. My gap year wound up being about 7 years. But I was working in factories. Some of the jobs we'd already talked about. Other ones were like, spent about 5 years in a zinc die casting factory lifting thousands of pounds of metal a day. And realized, I need to go back to college. And at that time, I had been working so I could buy synthesizers. And I got interested in, why does this not do what it does when I turn it? And found out Spartanburg Tech had an electrical engineering program. It was a 2-year associate degree, but I went through, got that, got out, and got a job here in Greer at the time. It was a company called Computer Dynamics. I was a printed circuit board designer. Did that for about 10 years. And during that time, I saw in the paper that Bob Moog was a professor at UNC Asheville and was giving a public lecture. And at that time, I had no idea he was living in Asheville. I thought he was still up in New York somewhere. I was amazed. So I definitely went to that lecture. It was a great talk, and afterwards I went up and introduced myself and gave him my card and said, if you ever need a circuit board designer, give me a call. And he called me the next day at my office, and it was like, oh, geez, Bob Moog's on the phone. This was back before cell phones too, so
it was a big deal.
Yeah. And I wound up doing a custom project with him. It was called the multi-touch keyboard. He was doing for a composer and educator named John Eaton. And it was basically taking a keyboard and putting touchscreen material on it and interfacing to a computer and sensing where you were touching it. And it was the precursor to a lot of things that are happening today. That is in the world of MIDI, the musical instrument digital interface specification. There's lately been a new thing called MPE for polyphonic expression. So it's all these instruments that not only can sense how loud you hit it or how hard you're pressing afterwards, but if you're pressing harder on one key than the other one afterwards, it senses that. So there are some really, really expressive instruments out there now. The Hawken Continuum probably being the pinnacle of it. But a lot of that started with Bob Moog and John Eaton's work on the multi-touch keyboard. And so I wound up doing there's actually 3 circuit boards that went into that I did with him, and kind of lost touch. Well, not didn't lose touch with him. I'd see him around Asheville. After that, I had gotten too busy with my day job and actually kind of passed off some of the follow-up work to another friend of mine who was doing circuit board design. And but would run into him in Asheville off and on. And actually have a video I put up a little while ago of a little later in I think '91. He invited me to another talk he was giving where he did a demonstration of the theremin, and it's actually him playing a theremin. I've been told by top theremins around the world, or thereminists around the world, that this is the best recording of Bob Moog playing a theremin that exists. And it was just sitting on a shelf in my closet for years until I finally found somewhere I could get the tapes digitized.
And it's a difficult instrument to play.
Yeah, I have one, and I don't play it. I have ways I can connect it to the synthesizers, and through the proximity you can open a filter, that type of thing. But theremin is amazing. One of the things I did when I was working at Moog was put on the Ether Music Festival up in Asheville, and the top thereminists in the world were there.
Mm-hmm.
Leon Theremin's great niece was one of them, and a number of others. But anyway, I got to work for Moog later after Bob died. A electronics components vendor that I knew I was into synthesizers, and they knew they had them opening in marketing, and I had actually moved into marketing by then. And so I gave him a call, sent him my resume, and wound up working there for about 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty amazing time.
So when you're starting to compose one of your pieces, tell us a little bit about since this is fairly much of a real soundscape. You've got a lot of different sounds going on, mm-hmm. and the soundscape itself seems to be the dominant element as opposed to like a melody or those kind of phrases. Mm-hmm. What do you use for your anchor? What are you looking for in a piece that kind of gives you that sense of this is coming together?
Well, a lot of it is textural. I love in electronic music we call pads. I think they probably call it another film scoring too. And it's the soft, that type of sound. And I've got probably 100 variations of that in the various instruments I have. So a lot of it is textural. Just about everything I do now is improvised, but that improvisation is kind of coming from a knowledge of music theory
Mhm.
I don't read music well, but I know my scales, I know my chords, I know my time signatures, and that type of thing. So I build from that. A lot of it is somewhat modal. Say, a lot of times when I'm thinking of a piece, the underpinnings of it are, okay, this is in C minor, it's in 32 beats per minute tempo, which is pretty slow, and it's going to use these sounds. So, and sometimes I don't even know. I'll start with these sounds and go on, and it depends on if it's something I'm, say, broadcasting from a live stream, or I'm just in here experimenting. But
Do you have happy accidents that occur?
oh yeah. And a lot of it is in the way things are configured. I mentioned MIDI before, and I imagine a lot of your viewers know what that is, but some of them may not. It's a musical instrument digital interface. It's what lets synthesizers talk to computers and other synthesizers and effects things. So I've got MIDI running to just about everything in here. But in addition to that, I'm using an older communication method called control voltages. And that's, I kind of get back to the old switched on Bach days when the Moog synthesizer looked like a telephone switchboard.
Mhm.
And those cables were running audio, but also they were running control voltages. And those voltages would open a filter. Like right now, I've still got the sequence for what I played earlier running. Everything's kind of turned down. But this module from Arturia here, Mini Brute 2S, it's a synthesizer, but it's also a sequencer built into that. And a sequencer is kind of like a player piano kind of thing.
Right.
And it's not sending notes to anything, but this yellow cable down here is coming into this jack on the back that is, I'm going to unplug that just for a second, controlling the cutoff frequency of the filter. So I can turn the knob to open the filter. And the filter, it's kind of like a really enhanced bass and treble control kind of thing. And now, this is electronically stepping that knob for me. And it's not doing it smoothly like I did, it's doing it in steps. And those steps are at that tempo that we were mentioning earlier. I think actually running at 30 right now.
Okay.
So what's nice about this is everything's sequenced together. I can do some really fun things, like this green box over here, I don't know if you can see, is an echo unit. And I've got MIDI running to it, and it will synchronize the echoes so that the echoes are happening on the beat. And so a lot of what I do is very synchronized, but feels much looser because I don't have a drum machine or something in it. It's not real tight techno, but there's a lot of things that are, little modulations like this and echoes that are happening on a beat that's very subtle, but they're there.
Mhm.
And that's the area that I like to stay in a lot, where you can just sense that pulse, and maybe you can't, and then maybe go over where it's a little more things. So that's the area that I really love to play
Okay.
around in. And MIDI and the control voltages really let me do a lot of things with that.
Well, give us an example of some things that you're thinking about here recently, if you want to just throw a few sounds in at us.
Okay.
And for my listeners and viewers, it's sort of like an organ with all the keyboards in the world and all the stops that you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, this one of the sounds I was using earlier is this one. And this is a Sequential Circuits Pro 2. This is a Sequential Circuits Pro 3. This one is actually a prototype. There aren't many other ones in the world that look exactly like this one. The knobs are different, and they have side panels on. This one's a little rough, but I've actually borrowed it from a friend, and I didn't have a lot of fun with it. But both of these are powerhouses when it comes to MIDI and control voltages. Sequential Circuits was started by a guy named Dave Smith, and he was one of the developers of MIDI, or his company Sequential, back in the day when MIDI became a industry standard. There was this kind of a golden spike moment at the NAMM show one year when one of the Japanese manufacturers and Dave Smith's company got together, hooked their synthesizers together, and they talked to each other. And so this thing processes MIDI really well, but it's got some amazing control voltage functionality into it. And there's some 4 jacks on the back for input, 4 for output. So I can send some amazingly complex control voltages from there to some of the other gear and to different things within itself. So right now, a little harder to hear, but there's some modulation happening in this sound. And that's the same thing that was happening over here, but it's all happening within this one piece of gear. Mm-hmm. But I could take that same internal signal that's modulating the filter here and run it over to the mode, to the Arturia over there, and even that little box above the Arturia with the red and green cables in it is a control voltage processor, and that's basically an analog computer in some ways. They can take those control voltages and add them together. I can add sine waves on that. I can invert one, add the other, offset levels, do a number of pretty amazing things. So using that, you can really kind of tailor the expressive qualities that the control voltages are giving you. But I love using control voltages in parallel to what I do with MIDI too, and what I'm just doing with my hands.
Okay. Have you ever done anything with function generators where you can generate the harmonics and the main peak? I've seen a couple of those, being used, and it kind of provides the source wave, and then you get to, distribute it across the keyboard and do some fun things.
Yeah, there are a number of things. I don't have them anymore, but I used to have a couple of Kurzweil synthesizers, and that they had a whole function section in there where you could do some interesting math on waves. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how that ties together. I remember back when I was going to Spartanburg Tech in engineering, taking trigonometry and calculus and stuff. I had the advantage that I could actually go home, add sine waves together, and look at the result on my oscilloscope. So
yes.
I had my own applied math lab at the house. And that's a great thing for education. The Bob Moog Foundation, which is run by Bob's daughter up in Asheville, is doing very similar things with elementary school education, bringing music into classrooms and letting kids play theremins, look at waveforms on oscilloscopes, and kind of waking them up to the math in that and how that can be a fun, creative thing. Yeah.
So as we look at what we're thinking of in the future, bringing some of the early Moog instruments to Greenville for the museum, I think would be a really smart thing to do, and we'll be working with yourself and others that can advise and help us craft something like that. So talk a little bit about what you're working on right now.
Well, what my main thrust right now is that with the quarantine situation, I've been kind of upping my streaming game a little bit. I'm kind of happy that Facebook has advanced a little bit and letting you run audio directly in now. So I've been working with some software and then just doing some live performances on a number of things. Some like that piece I just did is something I had done on a live stream earlier, and I've done some other things where I'm processing bamboo flutes through harmonizers and that type of thing. And as I mentioned, I've got a new piece I'm working on. flute you heard in that was actually this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Japanese shakuhachi, which I'm realizing again I'm getting back into. I have so many instruments. Sometimes I'll play things, put them down, and I'll play them for again. I regrew my facial hair, and found out that kind of affects it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You're basically putting this open hole against your chin, so if you got a lot of hair in there, that dampens the sound.
Yeah.
But I love processing these through effects. We were talking about Brian Eno earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who he had worked with was a guy named John Hassel, the trumpet player, and he's, I would say, probably my favorite musician. He has a very unique trumpet style. He studied in India and Indonesia, and worked with a lot of the early minimalist composers. He was, I think, on the original performance of In C. He has a very breathy embouchure that he uses, and he will run his trumpet through a number of different effects processors. And I just love that sound, and didn't play trumpet, but I played flute. So I thought, I could probably do that with flute too. So a lot of what I'm doing now is that using intelligent harmonizers that you basically tell it what key you're playing in, and it generates harmony in that key. And as you go up and down the scale, major thirds will shrink to minor thirds when they need to keep in that key. And it's a very, very amazing effect. And I'll add some echo and reverb on top of that, and it makes this big fluty space come out.
Neat.
Yeah, I mentioned too. I can put some links in some of the comments later to some of the stuff, so we can hear some of what we're talking about.
So you have your own website.
I do.
And that is?
experimentalsynth.com.
All right. And if people want to buy music, they can buy it from your website?
Actually, if you go to chrisstack.com.
Okay.
My experimentalsynth.com is more synthesizer demos. And it's like, you plug this into that, turn this knob, and it sounds like this. chrisstack.com has a embedded player for my there's a company called Bandcamp that's one of the better ones for musicians as far as services, and it'll take you my Bandcamp stuff there. Or if you just go to chrisstack.bandcamp.com.
Okay, yeah. And that'll be a good way for people to to pick up some of this. And then you've been putting things on Facebook, and I would encourage people to go to Chris's page and have a look. There's some wonderful extended sections there that they're just good for about any time of the day when you want to sit back and meditate just a little bit and maybe think about it. I personally love the slow development that the music takes on, and then you begin to sense the patterns within that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And now I know how they get controlled.
Yeah.
I didn't know how you were generating those, but that's just really, really cool.
Yeah, it's applied electronics.
Well, Chris, we have really enjoyed this short stay with you, and we'll probably come back and spend a little more time as we get a little deeper into what we're doing. But I would remind everybody that Sigal Music Museum covers this sort of music as well, and we've really enjoyed being here. Next week we'll be back in the 18th and 19th centuries, and I think we've got a special performance coming up on Friday with Rachel Fogel, so you'll want to tune in for that. I'm going to let Chris take us out today with a little final bit that you might like to do.